Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's midday. It must be time for LinkedIn Live Leadership number 5. I'm Gary Crosby. I'm an action coach, business coach. Today, we're going to talk about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I'm going to do this every Wednesday. I want to give you some real-world, pragmatic advice on leadership from everything I've learned from my time in the Air Force, from my time in the corporate world, and from my 3 years as a business coach. I just want to share that with you. So hopefully this will be of use to you. You'll learn something about team dysfunctions today. Now, teams are formed for quite a lot of reasons, aren't they? You might have a leadership team in your business. You might have a management team in your business. You might be putting together a team specifically for some kind of project. But what I've found in my lifetime is that quite often genuine teamwork, where the team is really working well together, is quite rare. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. Sometimes people have got a little personal agenda that they're hanging on to, or a professional agenda, or there's some kind of distraction going on. And therefore, you see teams with quite a lot of dysfunction. So that's what we're going to look at today. Patrick Lencioni did a lot of research. Back in 2002, he published this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. What we're going to do is like a whistle-stop tour in 10 to 15 minutes of this book. And hopefully we're going to pick out some gems for you to use in your team or your business. I'm also going to add on to that as a layer my experience, of course, of leading teams in the military. The biggest team I ever led was 175 people. I led smaller teams in the corporate world. And of course, I've been coaching business owners for the last 3 years, sometimes on the practicalities of business, but often on leadership for them as well, as they learn to grow and lead inside their businesses. So what I want you to do is to grab a piece of paper, leave plenty of space around these words, but write these 5 words down on this piece of paper, and we'll fill in the detail around them. Okay, those 5 words are trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. And when we get those 5 things wrong, they are the 5 dysfunctions of a team, if you like. So we haven't got that much time, so let's just dive straight in with number 1. So it's trust, but more specifically, it's a lack of trust. Okay, and it's a certain type of trust that we're talking about here. So let's imagine you said to me, I'm going to give John this piece of work because he did a good job for me before. Yeah, so that's called predictive trust. You're predicting that he's going to do a good job because he's done it for you before. That's not the kind of trust that we're talking about today. So for a team to work really well together, they have to have what's called vulnerability-based trust. Now, I don't want you to think that this is going to get too sort of touchy-feely and too soft, but it is a known fact that teams who have a high level of vulnerability-based trust operate really well together. So what does that mean? What are you looking out for to see whether or not your team has got that high level of vulnerability-based trust? Well, it might be an issue, for example, if you get the sense that people don't really know each other outside work. Yeah, they know each other as work colleagues and know nothing else about each other. That's a typical one. If you see that your team is not really comfortable with admitting to weaknesses or admitting to mistakes, that's another good indicator that the level of trust isn't high enough. And finally, if they do something wrong, they mess up, they impact on the team as a whole, they don't feel like they can apologize to the team, well, that's because they're not sure what kind of reaction they're going to get, and they don't feel like they can trust everybody else. Okay, so building trust in a team is a really good thing to do. What kind of things are you going to do as a leader? Yeah, well, let's look at the classic kind of corporate way of dealing with this. Well, we'll have some kind of event. It'll be a workshop, it'll be an away day, it'll be a social event or a sporting event. We want to get people together, start talking to each other and find out more about each other. Wouldn't it be interesting if you discovered that a team member, a team colleague supported the same team as you did, Liverpool Football Club in my case, or that you had a colleague whose child was into martial arts, just like your child is. You start to build up that knowledge and understanding. So those kind of events are good. Second thing that I would recommend is to have that kind of just and open culture inside your organization. So if you like to blame people when things go wrong, then most people are going to clam up when they hear that. If you've got an open culture where you say to people, we want to learn from our mistakes. So if you have a near miss or you have some kind of event where you think that your experience will be good for everybody else, you'll start to build trust there because people know they can talk about that kind of stuff without getting shouted down. And one of the things that I recommend always is profiling of some kind. So behavioral styles is a good one. I use DISC in my coaching practice. That does 2 things, really. It can raise your own awareness. Oh, right, that's why I behave the way I do in certain situations. So that's a good thing. And it can also raise your awareness of your colleagues because, you don't really know what they're like. You might be charging off just rah, 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 let's go. I don't really care about that. And John at the back is thinking, I can't do that until I've got the detail. And that might be a good reason to your understanding of the rest of your team and how they behave could help with that. So that's a good way to build trust and overcome that lack of trust. The second dysfunction of a team is around conflict. Actually, it's fear of conflict. And this is something I've seen in my corporate life. So let's imagine that your team meetings are really boring, right? There's no passionate debate. There's no urgent discussion of the key issues. People are on their phones. They're just kind of going through the course of the meeting. They tend to just have that kind of laissez-faire approach, guarded discussions around stuff. That's a sure sign that your team is frightened of conflict. They don't feel comfortable. They don't trust each other enough, going back to number one, to have those really open and honest debates. That kind of, let's get all the issues out on the table. And they end up with what's called false harmony, what Lencioni called false harmony, where they sit around, and I've seen this so many times, and whoever's speaking the loudest or whoever's the most senior just bulldozes the way through the meeting. You may have experienced that yourself. So when you see these signs, you know that your team isn't functioning particularly well, and you need to think about what you can do. I mean, you might even have outright open hostility between team members, and there's nothing more counterproductive than that, of course. So what kind of thing can you do? Well, it's your job as the leader, of course, just to make sure that every voice gets heard and to bring those issues out onto the table to be discussed. Encourage people to have that kind of passionate, open debate. So passion is good, emotion less so, particularly negative emotion. Giving people a harsh rebuke or something like that between team members just doesn't work. Outright hostility clearly isn't going to work. So let's create that environment where we can have that passionate discussion. Your job as a leader to do that. The third dysfunction is around commitment, but specifically the lack of commitment. This takes me back to my time as the commanding officer of one of the RAF's frontline flying squadrons, 175 people in my team, and I would get my executive team in, 6 people. We'd sit around the table and we'd say, so there's lots of stuff to discuss here. We need to come up with a plan. What we do is we close the door and we have an open and honest debate about what needs to be done. When we've done that, and we're crystal clear about what the plan is, we open that door and everybody goes out and speaks with exactly the same voice. And I'll tell you for sure, I did not win all of those arguments. I wasn't able to necessarily just pull rank at that point and win those arguments. So that's what commitment is all about. Yeah, the team needs to have clarity of the plan. So if you spot that they haven't got that, it's hard to commit and to buy into something like that. If people don't understand everybody else's role in the plan, it's hard for them to commit. It's hard for them to buy in. So again, that's your job as the leader. What can you do? Take all those inputs, look at all the options, make a decision, or reach a decision as in the group, depending on your leadership style. Be clear that that's the plan. Get them to buy into it. Get them to go out there with one voice. That's an important part of getting the commitment. Now that you've got a plan, you've got a team that's committed to it, they're trusting each other a bit more, they're not frightened to speak up and have a little bit of a passionate debate with each other, you need to go on to number 4. And accountability is number 4, but particularly as a dysfunction, that's the avoidance of accountability. And what I'm talking about here is not just the accountability to you as the team leader, but their accountability to each other. So the sort of thing that you might see here is that the team isn't holding each other accountable. Yeah, because they might be slightly afraid of conflict if they do that sort of thing. They're not calling out bad behaviors. They're not calling out behaviors that are counterproductive to the success of the team. Yeah, so that avoidance of accountability means that the team isn't able to function as effectively as it could, because people will go off and pursue their own agendas. If you see people that are comfortable even, and I've seen this in my corporate career, people who are comfortable with letting down the team, because they're pursuing their own agenda, that's a classic sign, clearly, of a dysfunction. So what are you going to do about it? Well, this is one of the most difficult parts. As a leader, when you spot these bad behaviors, failure to hold each other to account, letting the team down, that sort of thing, pursuing their own agendas, you have to set an example and step straight in to confront that difficult issue and that difficult behavior. Just by setting that example, you let the rest of the team know that it's really important that they hold each other accountable. Okay, so if they've got really genuine vulnerability-based trust in each other, it's highly likely that that kind of behavior will develop, because they will feel comfortable with talking to each other in that way. All right, so we're really whistling through these. There's just 5 dysfunctions. We're now on to number 5, and number 5 is obviously very important. It is actually inattention to results. Okay, so if your team takes their eye off the ball in terms of what the overall collective results have got to be, then clearly that's a significant dysfunction in your team. You might find yourself seeing that people are pursuing their own agendas, individuals. You might see people pursuing divisional agendas if you've got a bigger organization. You might see people pursuing geographic agendas, so the East Midlands team and the East Anglia team are fighting against each other and causing all kinds of friction and problems, not thinking about the collective good of the whole team. Yeah, so you'll see that kind of thing. That's a good example of how this dysfunction comes out. It comes when people don't have commitment to the overall team plan. They don't have accountability to the overall team plan. So if you get these previous dysfunctions ironed out, you're likely to have a positive effect on this. So what are you going to do about it as a leader? Well, I say this to all of my clients, and that is that you've got to keep score in some way. Yeah. And if you've got a collective team scorecard, KPI, dashboard, whatever you want to call it in your particular industry, one of my clients has just got a whiteboard in the office with 5 numbers on it. And those 5 numbers are the business's collective team numbers. No matter what everybody else is doing, they know that those numbers have got to go in the right direction. So work out what those important numbers are, create some kind of scorecard, make it really visible. That's the key thing. Get it out there so that everybody can see it. That's a classic way of making sure that people are attentive to results, because if they're off pursuing their own agendas, you won't see the team results working as well as it could. All right, so that is an absolute whistle-stop tour of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. I hope there's something in there that you've seen that could be of use to you. Maybe you can see that in your team right now. If you can, I would recommend reading this book, of course, because it's got much more detail in it. If you want some help with that, I can do workshops, an hour, 2 hours, half a day, a full day, around a specific dysfunction or the establishment of a scorecard or something like that. Whatever it is that matters, get in touch if that's of use to you. One of the things I really would recommend, though, is the profiling. So again, the DISC profile only takes about 20 minutes. If that's useful to you and your team, raising their awareness, raising team awareness, that's a good thing to get started with. So hope that's been useful for you. A whistle-stop tour, as I've said many times now, 5 dysfunctions of a team. See if you can spot them in your teams or in teams that you work with, and then you can think about the kind of things that you can do to iron it out. That was LinkedIn Leadership number 5. Next week, of course, it is LinkedIn Leadership number 6. And what we're going to do next week is the art of delegation, right? So business owners who have difficulty letting go. Have you ever heard somebody say, if you need a good job doing, do it yourself? So many business owners struggle with that. We're going to concentrate on that for 10, 15 minutes next Wednesday at midday. It'd be great to see you then for LinkedIn Live Leadership number 6. Thanks very much.